What is going on, Only Playbook fans? We are back for another episode. We are dropping our Dynasty Rankings, first official episode, 221 episodes in, and this is the first episode we are doing where we're dropping our first Dynasty Rankings. We got into Dynasty last couple of years, feel like we know it pretty well, and so we want to drop our own personal rankings. We're going to do our top 12 fantasy quarterbacks in Dynasty. Joining me is Jake, who is in my league this year. He was in my league last year, so also another fellow now Dynasty connoisseur. How are you feeling, man?
Good. I don't know what it is. I've really gotten into Dynasty a lot. I think just having that consistent team, getting to draft guys that I love, that I know I'm going to carry into multiple years, is really exciting for me. Still excited about the redraft season, but I'm now actually in 3 Dynasty leagues. We have 2 together. I jumped in a third one through a different group, a YouTube page that I follow that has a bunch of Dynasty leagues. So jumped in another one. So I can't get enough of it. I'll probably end up joining another one. So if anybody has one that's watching, you're looking for somebody to join the league, I'm probably open to it.
Dude, it's so fun. It feels like so much more control. You truly feel like the GM of a team. And like you said, when you're drafting a player, you have to think about the fact that you're going to have this player as long as you're in this league, which when you enter a Dynasty league, the goal is to be in there long term, unless you end up trading that player. So there's so much more attachment to drafting these players. So sometimes you're right. It does feel like it's more so like I want to draft a player that I want to have on my team, even though I have this other guy that I don't like as much and he might be ranked one spot higher, so sometimes you kind of make those types of decisions, and that's what makes it so much more fun. I agree. I'm having a lot of fun. And I may also be down to join another league. So if anybody's got any other leagues in Dynasty that they're starting, hit either of us up. So today we are going to talk about our quarterback rankings, Jake. Last week we dropped our redraft quarterback rankings. This week we are going to drop our Dynasty quarterback rankings, 12 through 1. I'm going to let you tell me your 12. I will talk about my 12, and then we will discuss any giant disparities that we may have.
Yeah. So I have a couple people in here that'll be similar. So my number 12, I still have Justin Herbert in here at this spot. I think at a good age where he's still going to be able to be a great, consistent quarterback for a long period of time. Number 11, I'm actually dropping in Brock Purdy here. So I really love the system that Brock Purdy's in. I think he's still very young. He has had some injury concerns as well. So that's one of the big things. But I think from a Dynasty perspective, you're looking for a guy that can be a consistent quarterback for a long time. Really like him there. At number 9, I have Trevor Lawrence. So
did you skip number 10?
Oh, I did. Sorry, number 10 is Trevor Lawrence. I just looked past, looked at the wrong number. Number 10 is Trevor Lawrence. Number 9, I have Jalen Hurts, which could be a little bit low here for him, just because he's been so good in rankings, but I just personally am not the biggest fan. It may be a little bit of my bias playing in there. Now I've got my numbers all mixed up. I'm at 8, correct?
Yeah.
All right, number 8, I actually have Jackson Dart plugging in here, which could even be a little bit low. Just want to see a little bit more of him. I think if he has a phenomenal year, he's going to be somebody that shoots up this board. Number 7, this is where I am dropping in Patrick Mahomes, primarily just because of age here. And fantasy not been as incredible as some of the guys I have above him. Number 6, a player that I actually drafted 4th overall in our first Dynasty League. I have Joe Burrow here at the number 6 spot. Top 5 are probably names you would expect to be in this area. I have Caleb Williams at 5. Lamar still at 4. I have Drake May as my 3. I actually moved Jaden Daniels all the way up to my number 2 slot in Dynasty rankings. And I still favor Josh Allen as my favorite Dynasty quarterback. So very similar to redraft there. I just think from a fantasy perspective, he's goated. So there's just no other way around it. I have to have Josh Allen at 1.
I love it. You know what's funny is I don't know if now we're just becoming better at Dynasty than we are at redraft, or we're just more in sync, but our list is so similar in Dynasty relative to how it was last week in redraft. So let me run through my 12 to 1, and then we will absolutely go through these. Number 12, also have Justin Herbert. So overlap with you. Number 11, you had Brock Purdy. I actually have surprise. Actually, you would be surprised. I have Bo Nix as my number 11 quarterback in Dynasty. Number 10, Trevor Lawrence. I think you also had Trevor Lawrence at number 10. Number 9, I have Jackson Dart. I think you also had Jackson Dart at your number 9. Number 8, I believe you had somebody else. I have Patrick Mahomes at number 8.
I have Jalen Hurts.
Okay. Yeah. I have them flipped. I have Hurts at 7, Mahomes at 8. You have them flipped, right? So very similar still. Number 6, you had Joe Burrow. I have Joe Burrow. That's crazy. That's absolutely crazy. Number 5, you have Caleb Williams. I have Caleb Williams. We might have just looked. I don't know. You stole my list, maybe? I don't know what's going on here. This is nuts. No, there is a little bit of a difference in the 2 through 4. So 4, I have Jaden Daniels. You have Drake May, right? Or no, you have Lamar. Sorry.
At 4.
Yeah, I have Lamar at 3. You have Drake May at 3. I have Drake May at 2. You have Jaden Daniels at 2. And then we both have Josh Allen still as our consensus number 1 dynasty quarterback, was also number 1 in redraft last year. So very, very similar. I really quickly wanted to just highlight their ages because that's very, very important in dynasty. And the thing that I'll say in the, very 2 years that I've started playing and all the research that I've done into going into dynasty is the typical window that I personally try to play for when I'm drafting my roster or building my team is 3 to 5 years, right? 5 years on the high end, 3 years on the low end. And so that allows me the highest level of flexibility when I'm building a roster, that I'm not just drafting all youth that I need to wait a couple years before they hit their stride. I'm not drafting all old people that like one injury or in a couple years, I have basically a brand new roster and I'm going to be digging from the ground up. And so really kind of balancing it out. And again, the best way to do that is, does this player offer me a 3 to 5 year window in which I think they can play their highest, level that I need from them? And if the answer is yes, that's usually where I like to go off of. But again, so because of the 3 to 5 year window, the ages are important, is because we look at Josh Allen, everyone's like, yeah, he's 30, but Drake May's 7 years younger. Yeah. But like, we're drafting Josh Allen. And do we think today, right now, Jake, that for the next 3 to 5 years, Josh Allen is still going to be elite?
Yep.
Without a doubt, right? Without a doubt. And so that's why I'm like, I don't care that he's 30. I don't care that Drake May is 23. I still think for the next 3 to 5 years, Josh Allen is going to be a far superior quarterback in fantasy to Drake May. To me, no brainer. And so that's why, that even though there's a giant age disparity, we still find that Josh Allen is the number 1 quarterback. And so similar to that, again, Josh Allen, he's 30, which again gives you plenty of window. Drake May only 23, Lamar Jackson 29, Jaden Daniels 25, Caleb Williams 24, Joe Burrow still only 29. You mentioned Jalen Hurts having him lower. He's still only 27 years old, which is nuts. Yeah. That's absolutely nuts. Patrick Mahomes, like not making redraft rankings, he's still only 30 years old, same age as Josh Allen. So he still has another 5+ years probably of elite level play. And I think that's why a point I wanted to bring up is he makes our dynasty rankings, but doesn't make our next year redraft rankings, is because we don't know what, in 3 years, this Chiefs team is going to look like. Is Andy Reid just going to retire? Is Mahomes going to stay a Chief? Is he once Travis Kelce's gone and they don't have a ton of weapons, let's say Rashee Rice goes to prison. Let's say he just can't stay out of trouble. Is Mahomes going to want out? Is he going to play the latter half of his career somewhere else? Or are they going to bring in a brand new coach, new skill players, and a bunch of new weapons for him to finish out in Kansas City? So because of all those variables, I'm not still constrained on the fact that Mahomes is just going to continue to be like a subpar fantasy quarterback and still be elite normal wise. There is a world where the situation gets better and he goes back to being an elite quarterback. And I think that's why he makes my dynasty rankings.
Yep. And I think a few players too I wanted to bring up here as we're talking about dynasty that I think a lot of people will be wondering about is like your Tyler Shucks, your Cam Wards, your Fernando Mendozas, those that for me, what I'm looking at when I'm thinking about a dynasty roster, exactly like you said, a 3 to 5 year window. Yes, these players could be phenomenal over the next 3 to 5 years. When I'm thinking about drafting a quarterback, I still lean a little bit more towards a guy like a Justin Herbert or a guy like a Trevor Lawrence that I've seen a proven track record of success and they've been able to establish themselves as strong quarterbacks in the league. Cam Ward could absolutely be a guy we're talking about in a couple of years that is on this list. Similar with Tyler Shuck if he continues to play at a high level. For me, the reason I'm not putting those guys on the list is I just want to see a little bit more prove it before I feel like they're the guys. Now, I think if you're drafting in a dynasty league, these guys start falling down the board. Great opportunity to draft these types of players, right? If you have a Cam Ward, you have a Fernando Mendoza that's falling down the board. Yes, you go and grab those guys because they're so young. There's so much opportunity for them to get better. But like you said, we're thinking on that 3, 4, 5 year window. These are guys that have all been proven talents that I feel like can really plug and play, especially if you're in a super flex league. if you're able to get one or two of these guys on your team, they're guys that you can really trust for the next half a decade to be consistent in your lineup and not really go anywhere.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. I think, Dynasty, because again, we talked about it on the beginning of the show, like you're making such a long-term investment when you draft this player, because the only way to get rid of him at that point is to trade him or cut him, which cutting a player in Dynasty when you're drafting him that high is very, very rare. Like you're going to try to, snuff out some kind of value for them, regardless of how bad the value may have gotten. And so because of that, the way you're drafting, it's like you said, Mendoza's the number one quarterback and he continued to fall in our Dynasty rankings. And that's simply because, like you said, there's so many quarterbacks here that we've seen have established level of success in the NFL that we feel is competent enough to, obviously you have the top echelon be one of your quarterback ones, but in a super flex, we have competence in guys like Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert, those guys that can be our quarterback two in a super flex league, that we don't have to take the risk on a Mendoza and wait a couple years. And if he doesn't pan out, then, we're right back to square one in the drawing board. So I think spending the investment on a quarterback and having those positions just established is so key, because it's one less, and essentially the biggest headache is not a headache for you. You can just set it and forget and have everything else kind of build around your quarterbacks.
Yep. And I think the one discrepancy we had, I think 11 players the same. I had Brock Purdy, you had Bo Nix.
Yes.
Was really the big difference. For me, primarily scheme related. I really love the Kyle Shanahan system when we're looking at a 3-year window. I don't really anticipate he's going anywhere. I could be surprised by that. I don't really expect the 49ers to look to move on. I really trust him as a system guy. I think Brock Purdy fits the system extremely well. So he's one of those guys. Would I be excited if I had Brock Purdy as my QB1? I mean, I would much rather have some of these other guys, but I think he's definitely one of those guys. If I had my super flex spot, would be extremely excited to have a guy like Brock Purdy filling in that role, just because that the offensive system is going to flow so well. But I'm curious for you, because I know you haven't been the biggest fan of Bo Nix as a quarterback, but he made your dynasty list.
Yeah, I mean, and again, this is a fantasy list, right? Not a best quarterback in the NFL list. And so I think similar to how you feel about Brock Purdy, Jake, is how I feel about Bo Nix. He's in the perfect system that, pinpoints all of his greatest strengths, and he's paired up with the mastermind in Sean Payton. And I think Sean Payton, if anybody's going to get the most out of Bo Nix and continue to, it's Sean Payton. And so I think that's why I have faith in him continuing to produce from a fantasy level, and because he runs the ball, he's relatively young. So I think that's the reason why I would have him over a guy like Purdy. Now, the thing that scares me about Brock Purdy is we talk about this 3 to 5 year window, right? Kyle Shanahan has been on the doorstep of Super Bowls now for how long? Like it's been gone to the point where I'm like, at what point is he going to be like, I need to move on, or they're going to be like, you've gotten to the doorstep way too many times without getting over the hump, that like we want to move on. That's step one. Step two is the roster turnover is going to be massive for them here shortly, because they're so freaking old. CMC at running back, George Kittle. They signed Mike Evans, who's 32, as their wide receiver 1. So like that, and their best, arguably their best offensive player is left tackle, and he's almost 40 in Trent Williams. So like you have that nucleus right there of like their weapons and their most important players all being insanely old and potentially could, fall off the cliff this year, get hurt this year. All 4 of those guys could be hurt this year, And so if that happens, say goodbye to Brock Purdy being a top 20 fantasy quarterback, because I don't know like what he would do at that point. And so that's my only fear with the 3-year window. And that's why the dynasty, I have a little bit more reservations with Brock Purdy. But if you were to tell me for the next 3 to 5 years, he's going to stay in that same system and Shanahan's going to stay there, then I'd be like, yeah, it's probably a pretty safe bet that he's going to finish top 12.
Yep. I think a few other ones too that may be worth touching on here that I think people may be surprised we don't have on the list. Dak Prescott. He's another one of those guys that's probably going to be in the system for a good period of time. It has good talent around him.
Mm-hmm. Just older, right? I mean, at that point, like when you have somebody who you think is going to, like we had Dak, I had Dak in my redraft rankings as QB 10, right? So fringe top 12, which means when you're a fringe top 12 quarterback and you're a lot older than kind of the rest of the field, all it takes is one season where you have 2 or 3 guys that now have taken the next step, and they're bumping you off of that fringe list to where you're still on the fringe, but you're on the outside looking in. And I think that's what happens here is there's such a influx of young quarterback talent right now in the NFL that I think we're so young heavy, if you will, that some of these older quarterbacks, while on other years, you'd be like, you know what? Like, I will take a flyer on Aaron Rodgers way in the late rounds if I just build out the rest of my roster. Well, the disparity between Aaron Rodgers' talent right now and like these young guys' talent is immense, fantasy wise, and actually play on the field, right? And so I think that's the biggest thing is we know this year in redraft, we have Dak as a top 10 play, but the thing is Pickens is on a what's franchise tag. And so he may not be here beyond next year. Lamb's going to be their only weapon. Their offensive line is still in flux and their defense still isn't great. And like we said, Dak's how old? Like 36 now. And so he's kind of teetering right in that area where you're like, maybe he's not 36. That seems a little old for Dak.
Yeah. He's probably 34.
Yeah. 34 seems like a safer guess, but I could, maybe he is 36.
Actually 32. He turns 30.
Okay.
He turns 33 shortly.
Okay, so 33 heading into the year, essentially, right?
Yeah.
So he's 33 heading into the year. If we're building out the next 3 years, there's probably a good chance he still plays till he's 36. But there's so many more range of outcomes for Dak because of the situation around him. Like, he plays for the Cowboys, who is controlled by Jerry Jones, and you never know what that man is going to do at any given time, right? Nobody thought he was going to trade for George Pickens. The next thing you know, George Pickens is on the team and they're like electric. And so there are sometimes he makes good decisions, but a lot of times it's questionable decisions. So when you just weigh out some of these guys who are so close to each other, all these small variables that in redraft, you're like, dude, I don't really care about that. That matters in Dynasty. Because again, you're investing in like the career of this player, not just 1 year, unless you're going to trade them. So that's why they don't make the list. But do I think Dak being a QB2 on a Dynasty team wouldn't be amazing? No, I think that'd be insane. Like if you have Dak as your QB2, which I might have Dak as our QB2.
You do have Dak as your QB2. Yeah.
And I have Josh Allen as QB1. Like, that's an insane stack. So it's not to take anything away from Dak and like that you should shy away from him in a Dynasty startup draft, but just be cognizant that his window is obviously a lot shorter simply because of his age relative to the rest of these guys.
Yep. And one other one that popped in my mind, he was a guy I gave some consideration for the list. He's actually my QB2 in our league. And still very young, CJ Stroud. So I still think there could be a lot of upside here with CJ Stroud. For me, the reason he's not on my list yet is just the fluctuation of the way CJ Stroud's played. He missed some games. There's been a lot of fluctuation in his play. You could really say the same about Bryce Young. They came in the exact same class. Both of these guys are players that Bryce, I would say, took a step up. He's definitely taken a step up last year. I don't know that I feel the same way about Stroud, but I also still feel like there could be a step up to take with CJ Stroud. So that's another guy that I wanted to mention is just really both of those players that, they're kind of on that fringe. They're not going to be – they wouldn't be a QB1 for me, but a super flex position that, I think may be worth, especially if you're looking at rebuilding. Some people go into it immediately, start trading for 2027 picks, trying to load up on future assets. These are both guys that I think if you're in a rebuild mode, maybe a different thought process around these guys where you do take a shot on a guy like CJ Stroud or Bryce Young in these offenses and play off of the age a little bit where they have a little bit more proven. You've seen a little bit more than you have with, say, Cam Ward, Fernando Mendoza, some of these guys, Tyler Shuck. But you've also seen a little bit of the ugly. But would like to hear what you think about those two.
No, I think that's an amazing point because those guys have become forgotten now, right? Because neither of those two have become like a top 12 fantasy quarterback. I think maybe Stroud was 7th 1 year, but I think that was an anomaly regardless. But I think what happens is these illustrious quarterbacks coming in as the number 1 and number 2 overall pick. So the upside that everybody built in their heads was, massive. And right now they're at a point where we're like, is this the best version of them that we could see? Or are they still so young and there's so many variables around why they've it feels like they've been stagnant or maybe, incrementally improving, and Stroud in his case, maybe incrementally regressing. Can you pinpoint it to specific reasons and put those reasons aside and be like, hey, this is what's called once, IPO'd stock came out at immense value. People didn't buy the hype. And so right now you're getting a stock that you've seen at one point valued at such high, places right now at such a discount that I absolutely agree. Like, imagine basically what happens in my scenario, right? I draft Josh Allen, I draft Dak Prescott, and let's say Bryce Young or CJ Stroud. Right now, you could argue that those guys are like ranking QB3 in like a 12 format. Like, they're probably like 20-ish they're ranked like in the 20s, right? So you could argue that they're either fringe QB2 or they're a QB3. But now let's envision a world where you drafted Bryce and CJ or CJ Stroud, and they fell as your quarterback 3. So they didn't play, but I have a Dak. So let's say in the next 2 years, Dak retires. Like that's it. Dak hits that cliff. He's retiring. I still have Josh Allen to, hold the reins of QB1, but now I've given ample time for CJ Stroud or Bryce Young to now hit that next step where they just get to plug and play, and you're essentially not skipping a beat. And you bought so low on them at the time that you were able to draft them as a bench piece to just sit and ride the bench for a year or two before they elevated themselves. Or if they elevate themselves the same year, then you hit it, you struck gold. So I think that's a phenomenal strat. It's so easy to forget about players who you built so much hype on, but they've had 1 or 2 years where they didn't live up to the expectation. And year 3, we talk about those year 3 jumps, the year 3 jumps, and we're talking about it with Caleb Williams. But sometimes it could be year 4, sometimes it could be year 2. So in the case of these Bryce Youngs and CJ Strouds, maybe it's taking in them 1 extra year. But Bryce Young is absolutely a player I would still, draft with so much potential upside. Same with CJ Stroud.
Yep. Yeah, I feel exactly the same way about both of them. And I mean, that's the reason I bought into Stroud. I may even still end up taking a quarterback like an Aaron Rodgers, somebody down the board that I can plug into that slot to feel a little bit more confident in. But I don't think these are guys you completely give up on. If you see them falling down the board in a draft class, then definitely somebody that I would look to snag and hold on to. Both of them going into now that 4th year, now you're looking at, do they pick up the 5th-year option? Are these going to be guys that get extended? Those are also some of the things you think about when you're drafting these guys. Another reason they're kind of off the list is, there's an opportunity where Bryce Young goes back to 2 years ago, Bryce Young this season. And we say, okay, we have the weapons now with T-Mac. We have Coker that we're feeling good about. Now we just need another guy with Arch Manning and all these other guys coming in. If Panthers have a fall off season, they're picking in the top 5. I wouldn't be surprised to see them say, okay, well, maybe this Bryce experiment didn't work out. We move on. So that's why those guys rank a little bit lower for me, even though they are as young as they are and have some proven starter insulation for the time being.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that's a fair assessment or reason why they would be ranked a little bit lower, because we just haven't officially seen it the level that we've seen it with some of these other players. And then the last, I guess, it's something that I thought of based on this point that you just made is you have those guys that are a tier below those guys where they were drafted high up, but right now they haven't even lived up to any potential, right? And I'm talking about JJ McCarthy, Michael Penix. And right now, guys like that, you're getting at basically next to zero value. You can draft them so late in your drafts. McCarthy and Penix are still on the board for us. I think both of them.
We're around 13 or 14.
Yeah, 14 or 15 right now. And there's a world where one of those guys, like McCarthy could just leave, let's say Kyler stays, has a great year, they extend him, McCarthy gets traded, he gets an opportunity, let's say with the Jets or something, and boom, immediately in the next 2 years, he's become a starter. Same thing with Atlanta, right? Penix is there. They signed Tua, but Tua could essentially just be a 1-year bridge, or Tua could be that guy where he earns the job and wins it, and then Penix gets shipped off. But they're both so young, and they were both drafted so highly that at this point, with next to no cost to you to either of us in the 14th, 15th round, this is where I would be taking flyers on players like that could potentially offer you league winning upside or dynasty building upside, if you will, where you have cornerstones that you found in the rough when their value was, as diminished as it possibly could be. And if it doesn't work out, again, it's a 15th round player. You just cut them and move on.
Yep, absolutely.
That is it. That is all I had for our quarterback dynasty rankings. Anything else you wanted to touch on, Jake?
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you guys like the Dynasty content, feel like you want more of this, if you would like us to get into more on Dynasty startup draft strategies, get into a little bit more on that, we're happy to make that kind of content too. Just let us know, drop a comment, let us know, hey, we'd like to see a little bit more draft strategies. Who are the cornerstone assets still on teams today? Happy to start filling in with some of those too. If we have folks that are interested in that Dynasty, I know Swikar and I have both really started to enjoy the Dynasty leagues. So happy to make any videos that you guys want around those as well.
Yeah, and to add to that, we can continue and make longer ranking lists for Dynasty, because I know it's prevalent to have, essentially all of your quarterbacks ranked. So if that's important, if that's something that you guys want, let us know. We're more than happy to put that out as well. So certainly appreciate you guys listening and following along. If you are watching, hit the like, hit the subscribe. It helps spread the word. Instagram, Twitter, TikTok is where you can find all of our socials. I'm Swikar. That is my Twitter, and that is Jake. Next week, we are going to do running backs, redraft first, and then the following week we will do Dynasty. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. See you guys.